Someone crosses 7 figures in their net worth. Finally. The number they've been chasing for a decade. They expect fireworks. A feeling. Some internal shift that confirms they've made it. Instead, they wake up the next morning, check the account again just to be sure, and feel nothing. Here's the part nobody tells you about becoming a millionaire: the money isn't the strange part. The strange part is everything that quietly rearranges itself around you the moment it happens. And most of it has nothing to do with buying things. Today we're going through the 5 things that actually change, not the fantasy version. The real one. Why this matters right now. In 2026, millionaire doesn't mean what it used to. Thanks to inflation, $1 million today has roughly the purchasing power that around $300,000 had in the early 1990s. The number sounds enormous. The lifestyle it buys is often just comfortable. Not extravagant. Comfortable. And yet the psychological and structural shift that happens when someone crosses that threshold is still very real, just not in the way movies or social media portray it. There are currently more than $24 million millionaires in the United States alone. That means the version of making it most people imagine is now a fairly common financial position, which makes it worth actually understanding, rather than fantasizing about. Because what changes isn't the lifestyle everyone assumes. What changes is far more structural, and in some cases, far more uncomfortable. The 5 things that actually change. 1. Your relationship with risk inverts. Before the million, the goal is growth. Aggressive investing, career risk, swinging for upside, because there's not much to lose and everything to gain. After the million, the psychology flips. The dominant question stops being "how do I grow this?" and starts being "how do I not lose this?" This is called loss aversion, and it's not weakness, it's mathematically rational. Losing $200,000 when you have $1 million hurts more, behaviorally, than the pleasure of gaining the same $200,000 did on the way up. This is why so many new millionaires suddenly become more conservative investors than people with a fraction of their net worth. The number changed. The nervous system followed. 2. Taxes stop being an afterthought and become a full-time strategic problem. At lower income levels, taxes are something you deal with once a year. Past $1 million in assets, especially if it's generating income, taxes become an ongoing structural decision. Capital gains timing. Tax loss harvesting. Entity structuring. Whether assets sit in taxable accounts, retirement accounts, or trusts. This is the point where most people go from doing their own taxes to hiring a CPA who specializes specifically in this. Not because they're showing off, because the cost of not doing it, missteps in structuring, can quietly erase tens of thousands of dollars a year in unnecessary tax exposure. 3. The definition of safe gets more complicated, not simpler. You'd think more money equals more safety. It does, up to a point. Then a new problem appears: concentration risk. A lot of new millionaires get there through one asset: company stock, a business sale, real estate. Which means their entire net worth is often sitting in one basket at the exact moment they can least afford a single point of failure. Diversifying out of that position isn't just a strategy decision anymore. It's often also a tax event, an emotional decision, and sometimes a loyalty conflict, if the asset is tied to a company they built or still work for. 4. Social dynamics shift, quietly, and not always comfortably. This is the part nobody puts in a finance video, and it's arguably the most disruptive. Conversations about money change. Requests for loans start showing up from people who never asked before. Some friendships develop a strange, unspoken asymmetry. Some relationships get closer. Others get quietly resentful, even when nothing is ever said out loud. Most new millionaires don't talk about this publicly, because it sounds like a complaint wrapped in privilege. But financial psychologists who study sudden wealth consistently find the same pattern: the social recalibration is often more disorienting than the financial one. 5. The goalpost moves. This is the most consistent finding across wealth psychology research, and it's almost darkly funny. Ask someone with $500,000 how much they need to feel secure, and the answer is usually $1 million. Ask someone who just crossed $1 million, and the number quietly becomes 2. Ask someone at 10 million, and the number becomes 25. This isn't greed exactly. It's adaptation. Humans recalibrate their baseline to whatever their current reality is, and then measure enough against the next rung up, not the one they're standing on. The target doesn't get satisfied. It gets relocated. The uncomfortable math nobody says out loud. Here's the part that sounds almost absurd until you actually run the numbers. $1 million, invested conservatively using the commonly cited 4% safe withdrawal rate, generates around $40,000 a year in sustainable income. That's not a yacht. That's a modest, middle-income salary, generated passively, genuinely valuable, genuinely life-changing for financial security, but nowhere close to the lifestyle the word millionaire conjures in people's heads. The gap between the cultural fantasy of $1 million and the actual spendable reality of $1 million is enormous. And that gap is precisely why so many new millionaires report feeling less rich than expected, because their internal definition of rich was calibrated by a media image that was never accurate to begin with. The uncomfortable truth: the number itself doesn't deliver the emotional payoff people expect. The behaviors and decisions built around the number do. Social media sells one version of becoming a millionaire: the private jet, the watch collection, the launch into an entirely new stratosphere of life. The reality, statistically, looks almost nothing like that. According to research on U.S. millionaires, the majority live in ordinary homes, drive used or modestly priced cars, and got there not through a single dramatic windfall, but through decades of consistent saving, investing, and avoiding lifestyle inflation. The self-made millionaire, in the actual data, tends to be quietly boring. No launch party. No visible transformation. Just a net worth statement that eventually crossed a threshold while the person kept living roughly the same way they always had. This is precisely why the 5 changes we just covered matter more than the ones people expect. Nobody's Instagram feed shows the tax strategy meeting, the awkward conversation with a friend who needs a loan, or the quiet unease of realizing the goalpost moved again the moment they hit it. Zoom out, and this stops being just an individual milestone story. It becomes a pattern about how humans relate to money at every level of wealth, not just this one. The behaviors that show up at $1 million, recalibrated risk tolerance, shifting social dynamics, a moving goalpost, aren't unique to millionaires. They're just more visible there because the number is culturally significant. The same psychological mechanics show up at every financial threshold, just quieter, and with lower stakes attached. Which raises a bigger structural question about how an entire culture defines financial success. If the goalpost mechanically moves regardless of the number reached, then the number itself was never actually the destination. It was just the current checkpoint being mistaken for the finish line. So here's where this leaves us. The person from the cold open, the one who checked their account twice and felt nothing, wasn't broken. They were experiencing something remarkably well documented and remarkably rarely discussed. The number changed before the internal definition of enough ever did. So the question worth sitting with isn't how do I become a millionaire? It's this: if the goalpost keeps moving no matter what number you hit, what number were you actually chasing in the first place? That's not a question a bank account can answer.